ladies and gentlemen, the Tom and Hal can't spell.
Well, good early afternoon for everybody, mainly for myself and Kristian, who's been around for some time today.
One of my favourite lyrics from an Australian artist, the band's name, the Whitlams, is one of my favourite lyrics is, I woke up early in the afternoon.
No, that's the wrong button.
We take a call directly. Early success in our careers.
Stop it, for God's sake. I'm just being myself. You don't have to clap for that.
You're yourself. My eyelashes are...
Right.
Never mind.
No, nobody's himself or herself nowadays. Well, I got on in front of me the one and only phenomena in the Stockholm city neighborhood that's called Papa Hell, amongst others. And my name is Tom Drifty, and we were thinking of presenting you with some of the subjects, some of the topics that are on the top of our heads and in the bottom of our hearts, one way or another. And I was thinking, make it kind of a natural thing, which in itself is kind of an absurd, because natural should not be made. If we're taking up the topic of being a person that initiates things, that is to say, in the modern slang, you could say a man of projects, somebody who just can't let things happen on their own accord, but rather has to take charge of things and make them run, make them work. Do you see yourself in that, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's my part of my existence is to make things happen. And quite early on, I guess you could say in high school, I was very living in my future. I was very, very aware that I would be doing things, projects, working on things. I went to a bit of a seminar to listen to a speaker, and one of the rules that I still live by is the rule of 48. And to simplify that, it's...
But you're only 42,
Well,
aren't
I'm
you?
40 soon. So what is that? We can talk about that in the next exciting episode. But the rule of 48 is basically, if you don't act on something in the first 48 hours of thinking about it, you just won't. You just won't do anything about it. So, we were talking about recording us talking.
Right.
And now we're sitting here recording us talking. So you just make things happen. You find a way. And
why is it so important? Why is it since the very, as you said early on, since you can remember, it was of such a great importance? What is that drive?
I think it's about, I have an amount of time on this planet, and I really like recording things. I like having things published, printing something. I love every part of that, like coming up with what we're going to print or talk about, listening to it back, or waiting for a delivery to arrive with the next issue of a magazine or something.
Right.
I love getting excited about my own work. And I share excitement with other people who love their own work. And this project, this talk that we're having, I love it because I don't know what we're going to talk about. We're just two people having a chat.
And that's what it's all about. That's what as we said in the beginning, that it's about loving what you do.
It is, and I just, because my mind is moving so quickly,
I love it.
also, the listeners or the audience that we may or may not have right now, they're part of this conversation. There is no us and them or level or anything. So I'm hoping that, they can fully feel that they're a part of this conversation, just by listening. We are speaking as honestly as we can, and I think that's super important because many people don't. They just keep their opinions to themselves for whatever reason that is.
Yeah. Honesty is one of those words. I feel you, Chrissy, and I can definitely see that both in you and those almost a year that I've known you now, and we had quite a few conversations of the deeper kind, and we were touching these kind of matters that kind of brought us to the point we felt that that project is something that we have to do. We just have to do it for ourselves because we enjoy that, because we feel that, quite frankly, there are people somewhere over there that might enjoy that too. Of just the very fact that in existence, in human form, two people are speaking to one another honestly, expressing themselves, letting the other express himself as well, and not deciding on any specific border apart from a few guidelines even there. And it is definitely with that reason that I chose to begin with this kind of a topic of being an initiating person, because I believe we share that. And your answer to that was quite similar to what I would answer, which is really that. It's just, you just, ever since I can remember about myself, you can't, as soon as an idea would pop up in your mind, you knew you had to do that. Because if I'm not going to do that, it's not going to get done. As simple as that. The interesting part of that, I think, is when you encounter people who do not act in that way, and the interaction that then goes about. That is to say, when you realize that not everybody is like that. And if you have to interact with a person in a situation where, for example, you have a certain project in mind and you need somebody's help, and that person is not really that the same type, I would almost go about to kind of divide the world into two kinds of people. You got either the ones who just can't help doing stuff, making stuff, producing stuff, being active, being productive, really. And the other kind that perhaps, of course, you can go into even deeper and say that perhaps it's the fact that they perhaps feel more fulfilled naturally. I've come across this kind of people, which you could almost say that I envy some of them, because they don't need to produce all the time. They don't need to be actively productive. They're already there. They're kind of fulfilled in a way. So there's also that part, which is interesting, I think. I think that there's definitely, in my case, ever since I can remember, be it that you would draw something as a kid because you wanted to have produced something, to have accomplished something. I certainly believe that part of the reason for being an initiating personality, is the fact that there is something missing almost all the time. There's a certain dissatisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a society that doesn't allow us, or is definitely steering us to be someone other than the person who we should be. It just makes life easier for those who are in power. And I totally agree with what you were saying. I struggle to find happiness when I'm not a part of the control or in a leadership role. And I do envy people who are different to me and can be happy with their whatever happens during the day. I really struggle with that. I am quite an emotional guy, and that's part of the reason why I'm good at what I do, because I feel it and I dream it. And this morning it was a 3:00 start for me, and then I went back to sleep at 4:30. But I had to get something out.
What were you doing?
I was just listening to a couple of things on the computer and just making a couple of notes on my phone. probably music, to do with music, because during this time, of the corona and just being a little bit isolated, I decided to pick up a guitar and learn how to play, because it was one of my greatest fears. And the other part of that is actually to sing or perform live. So I'm at the beginning of my journey, but you mentioned it just before we went on the air now, how I'm like a little boy, super excited. And I am. I've got a couple of, for the listeners, I've got a few packages in the mail, and I can't wait.
I love it. I
can't wait to get home and unbox whatever it is. It's just some
new toys for the
toys.
kid in you, and that's lovely that you can actually discover that.
The difference is that my toys, when I was young, they were my toys, right? Now we can call them toys, but I'm treating them like tools. Because it's about producing and documenting my ideas and thoughts and harnessing my emotion and putting it into something that it doesn't matter if someone else wants to listen to it. I need to get this out, and I'm it's my self-development. I will overcome a fear. During that period of I guess the high school years, once again, where we're still figuring out what we're doing.
Which are very crucial years for any individual.
I was naturally gifted at sports, so I was good at it. So I was able to overcome any intimidation. Like perhaps I was the one who was intimidating. But around me, some of my closest friends, who were very creative people, were great at music, and so they intimidated me to the point where I was just not prepared to pick up an instrument or take that class. So it's been inside me for 20 years, and so here I am, reliving my
teenage dreams.
The teenage dreams, yeah. And,
I have to kind of just make a short commentary there, which is. I feel you. I feel everything that you're saying is just due to the fact that we've had some conversations prior to getting on air, and I know I recognize that way of thinking, and I recall one band from when I was growing up, an Israeli band from the 80s, was heavily influenced by Joy Division and the New Wave and Interpol and all that kind of deeper independent music that was flowering back then. And I remember having seen in an interview with this guy, the lead singer, he said that it always felt that whatever it is that you did had to do with the 15-year-old you. And that just kind of resonates with what you're saying for me. And I can even see that in my work, both as a musician and as an initiating personality, really. These are stuff that have been accumulating there in those early crucial years of discovering who you are, of trying different ways, of getting to that point of satisfaction, of understanding what it's all about, that, somewhat chaotic existence.
Yeah, it's the friction of, society has these rules, and it's the friction of thinking that you understand and can do everything, but the rules say that you can't. So there's tension there. You become rebellious. So I'm talking about you can't legally drive a car on the roads, or you can't drink alcohol, for example, or you can't go into a nightclub, and so your friends may be in there, but you're still not allowed because of some invisible barrier. And so that friction is, if you harness that in the right way, you can, with that creative brain where you're just growing at a rapid rate.
I love that word, friction.
Yeah,
I think it could apply.
It's everything. It's
right.
So good if you can harness it in the right way, and I think that's one of my strengths. And in the way that I still can share the excitement that a 15-year-old myself, like a 15-year-old, like I was. I just.
I guess that's what they mean. That's what I mean with the old saying of don't never lose your inner child.
Yeah, and maybe that doesn't go down so well, amongst, people who like to count the years, and someone who is, I'm a 41-year-old male, according to the system, so whatever that means. But, we're all different, but I don't necessarily go against the grain on purpose. It's just I'm me, and I'm lucky and grateful that I've been able to fight that fight, because it very much, society, they kind of brought me up to, the schooling process and all that. Life is tough, life is challenging, life is like, well, it can be. It can be. I don't know really where I'm going with it.
I think friction is a word I could definitely take and apply on different circumstances and different perspectives on that which we refer to as life. You could say that, and even biologically, friction is the initiating power of fire, of making things go. If friction occurs between different organisms, if you look at it biologically, and in turn makes life continue, really. So friction is one of the causes for continuity in biological terms. It is also the initiating power behind the individual's development, as you were mentioning about yourself. Well, the emotionally, there's always, whenever there's friction, as you said, whenever there's the individual, we could say it this way, I could even go and do the elimination process and say that if you don't experience friction at a young age, normally this would say that you are too much afraid of putting yourself in front of the others, or what we call society, the ones from whom we get the idea of self. I am myself because this is what the others are saying about me, that I am. And it does require that one in that age, hopefully in that age, somewhere in his teens or alongside those years, is brave enough, I would use the word brave enough to put himself or herself in front of the masses, in front of that stream, which you could refer to as the mainstream, whatever that might be in that time period when one grows up, and say to himself, first and foremost, that's me, that's what I can. What do I do with it? What makes me happy?
I mean, as hard as society tries to guide us, to be followers, to fit in with the system, to make life go round easily, nature will always have its way. So naturally, there will be the leaders, those who are the front people, the creators, the innovators, all of that stuff will always be the minority. But that's perfectly natural and normal. And going back to the happiness thing is, I wish I could be happy, in any situation in life. But unfortunately, the everyday routine kind of frustrates me. I'm working on
the hard facts of life. It seems to me that people that are, before I'm getting to that with leaders and that percentage thing, the minority thing that you were mentioning, which we were talking about before, I got a question for you to see if we can go and explore that again, which is always a good question to ask, and I think we're probably gonna revolve around that word for quite a few conversations, one way or another, because this has to do, in a single word, with basically everything in human existence. That is to say, the mental existence in any case. when we say happiness, what do we mean, essentially?
It's a great question. I mean, like you say, we'll be discussing this forever. And especially now, because a trendy what do you say, diagnosis is to be stressed or suffer from anxiety or
Right.
all of these kind of, it's probably controversial me saying this, but, I can't ever remember suffering any kind of anxiety or stress in the 80s or 90s. I just didn't know what that was. But it's been embellished and now it's a thing. It's like, and it's almost taught. And I think that is very, very dangerous on one side of the coin.
I agree.
Of course, if you're suffering from something, it should be dealt with in some way, treated or
I
worked on.
could just make a short commentary there that could lead the question perhaps even deeper in that respect, is that when you're talking about trends in what is considered to be the common, the accepted human behavior at a certain time, you could go about and say, well, in the 11th century, dyslexia was not really pointed out. It doesn't mean that people who suffered from dyslexia were not there. They were there, and they couldn't read. So in one way, that's perhaps the positive development in the fact that we are being aware of more diversity than before, and thus are being able to basically help society and being able to find the right way to helping those individuals, which wasn't even thought of back then. So this is the positive side I see about it, but the negative that, as you were mentioning, is quite obvious as well for people who were not raised in those times, in the current trend of having 1,001 different diagnoses. And the question being, does it really help the person to call it by name, that I have ADHD or what you call that?
Yeah, I have no idea, but I think that when you focus on something, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
So if you ask me today, have I been stressed or have I suffered some kind of anxiety, the answer is yes. But if you ask me, like before I knew about it, I was just like, oh, I'm just having a bad day. I don't feel right today.
Right.
Meaning, I just didn't feel motivated to do something.
Exactly.
The problem was much smaller, But now with commercial breakfast television, the target is everybody, and they need something to talk about. And look, I'm probably going to cop criticism for it, but I'm speaking my truth. It's like,
that's what we're here for, speaking our truth.
I just wish that people didn't shove down my throat that I may be stressed or suffer from something.
Right.
When they haven't even taken the time to have a chat with me. And I think it's so important just to have that conversation with whoever you come into contact with, if you have the time. Like, we'll go into it some other time, but I randomly met Tom, and I've done nothing but learn ever since I met Tom, and that's just because I open my ears. I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I think that's super. It's important to have fun, children. It's important to have fun and suffer from anxiety.
Don't be all too serious when you suffer from anxiety. Otherwise, you wind up suffering from that for the rest of your life. So
Pre-recorded clap really stressed me out. I mean.
That's why you should always record live, children. As they did in the 70s. No, but Kristian, I hear you, and I tend to believe that it is that way, regardless of what it is. As soon as you call it by name, it becomes a problem. That is to say, it becomes something that you're aware of and that your mind is focusing on. and that in turns takes energy.
No, I have to say that, like, I'm not saying that there's no such thing. You know, like,
No, other
I
thing.
understand that so many people are suffering from something.
Right.
I don't know how we got to this. We were talking about happiness. But happiness and suffering.
It's quite a direct connection.
Yeah, the villain always wins on this show. But yeah, I'm not saying that people don't suffer something. I'm just saying that perhaps, like, if society packaged it in a different way and delivered it in a different way that wasn't beneficial to those in power,
Right.
maybe we wouldn't be suffering as much as we think we are.
I think this deserves a hand clap.
Kind of go heavy. I mean, look, heavy for some. We talk about this stuff all the time. Like, I've never sat on so many park benches, you know, during this whole summer with Tom, just talking about anything. And yeah, once again, just I encourage that.
And one of the things I truly believe in from my short experience on the planet is that talking, and perhaps the other side of talking, which is not stressed enough in society and in the school system, which is called listening, is essentially the greatest medicine, the greatest treatment to any sort of mental cumbersome situation. And I could develop it even further and say that in ancient cultures, in cultures that are non-Western, that haven't been totally westernized to this day, this is the kind of treatment that's been in use to this very day. Of course, there's the ceremonial part, because we live, we all you know, the human being is enjoying that. You know, you want to get a context for that conversation. So what we did in Western society is that we went about and named it psychology, coming from the Greek psyche, psychos, which means the soul, really. This is the essence of an individual. And it is quite clear then that the only plausible solution for any, or solution is not the right word, but treatment for any problems of the soul is listening, talking, listening to yourself, talking to yourself, and obviously to others. So what we done in the Western context is we created a whole hierarchical idea out of it and a profession out of it, whereas in other cultures, and as well as in our, so to say, primordial cultures in the West, what you would have is a certain person, a sort of shaman, if you like, that you would go to and talk. And that shaman was just a great master at listening.
I mean, psychologists, psychiatrists, like, isn't that the modern day, or the Western shaman?
It is.
Because
definitely.
they don't really do anything. They just ask questions that, make you think. and,
And thinking is not something you get paid for nowadays.
No, exactly. But on that note too, like, just we're kind of, it's going back to nature, and that whole thing is we learn.
It's
to
very
talk.
mainstream nowadays to get back to nature.
That's it. It's, yeah. Gonna check up those invoices, but basically it's like, we have a sound effect pre-programmed on this board that is the round of applause. It's one of my favorite sounds. I've got a couple of favorite sounds. One of them is the sound of people applauding. It's kind of like an approval or an acceptance, it's something that everyone can do. You just put two hands, like, it can't get any more simple. Someone I wonder if someone invented.
I'll
the
keep
clap.
that in mind for the next time you feel unmotivated.
But yeah, I'm just saying that even today in 2020, you know, like that's one of my favorite sounds is just someone putting their hands together. So natural. The other sound is like the sound of a choir, like people's voices. You know, when they're singing in that choir, it
Coming
just
together.
chills down my spine. You know, but it's just human voice, human sound,
Yeah.
not technology. Nothing that we're, you know.
No. And I think that it's a very good point that you're taking in the very fact that the natural sounds, now we're getting a bit into the way the human animal works. These are, and these have been since the beginning of time, since, you know, we were living on trees. These have been the very first sounds that we got to know. And the voice of the mother or the father or basically that small group, the flock, is the thing that reminds us of home, of safety, of a certain coziness, which is what everybody wants, really, and needs.
Comfort. It's safe. You know, and if I could pick a third favorite sound, it would actually be the sound of bells ringing, like big bells. And that goes back to that, you know, you use the word ceremony. And I mean, that's very primitive in a way. You know, you come together, ceremony could be dinner together or... Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Let's discuss that. But it's like, it's you're a historian. You know more about the past than I do. But I'm just thinking like clapping of the hands, singing, and then the bell. I mean, the bell must have been around for a while.
And the bell is very interesting, you mentioning it. I think this is where it gets a bit more personal than sort of personal experience of the sounds that I like. I could take, for example, in my case, what would probably replace the bell then in the third place would be the sound of the flute. Which is there's something I can't really explain about. You can go into descriptions. But I think the bells have something to do with the fact that it is a part of Western society and since thousands of years. So the bell, when you think of a church bell, it's the sign of a community in a way. Has been the sign of reassembling. Something's happening. Different times of the day. There's order. There's discipline. There's something happening according to the plan, and all that goes back to the feeling of belonging, the feeling of safety, the feeling of the group is functioning, being a part of the group. I am accepted, and so on and so forth. So there's definitely a lot to do with the bell. And interesting, you know, that Tom is very much into linguistics and this kind of nerdy stuff. And I remember from my Latin studies that there's one term when you want to describe certain words in all human tongues, onomatopoeic, and that has to do with words that are comprised of the sound of the things they refer to.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of these examples in any language. You can say in English, if I were to describe the sound of something being thrown into the water, I would say blop.
Yeah, okay.
And blop is onomatopoeic word because it sounds the way the actual phenomena sounds.
Yeah.
And in something you would like, because you like bells, is that in Latin, the word for bell is tintinabulum. So I always thought it was so beautiful.
Yeah. Is it similar with like colors and like, for example, an orange is orange? Or is that a different?
Well, in the case of orange, as far as I can recall, in the case of just the word orange, which has its origin in orange, which is the French version, I believe that first and foremost it was the color, and originally an orange was called a golden apple in most languages.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Most languages had that, and if you take Swedish as an example, apelsin.
Yeah, exactly.
What that is derived of is apple, obviously, the first part of the word. And the second part is sin, which refers to China,
Okay.
because the first oranges that came to the West during the times of the Roman Empire came from China, came from the East. So sin stands for China.
So is it actually the pronunciation should be apple shin?
Something like that.
Not
The interesting thing is in Hebrew they actually say sin. They have preserved that old version of saying sin. So sin is something that has been, or could say it this way, the anglified versions, the anglophone version of many words, due to the fact that the British could not really pronounce most of these names during the time of their biggest conquests, which is anglified things, and this is why it got got named the way it does. So pronunciation is the way it is, and English on a general level is a hybrid language, which is actually very funny to consider the fact it's a hybrid language that has taken over the world, because originally English didn't sound at all the way it does now. This is one of the reasons why if you take English separately, if it were to be a language that's not a world language, it's not what you call a lingua franca, it would have been probably one of the toughest languages to learn, due to the fact that the way the spelling rules are extremely far-fetched from the way it sounds. If you think of the way the letter U is pronounced in different situations, different circumstances, the th it could be th and it could be the, and all of those changes are a part or due to the fact that England was ruled by quite a lot of different nations and has been ruling quite a lot of different nations. So England between 1066 I think, and about 1400s was ruled by France. And this is why you have so many French words, amongst others orange. and it's also due to that fact that English language is so diversified when it comes to pronunciation. And you see that, when people try to spell things, and people who don't have English as their mother tongue, or even people who do have their English as their mother tongue, can't really spell, because it's just extremely difficult. Some of the words just don't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I guess reading and writing is something that doesn't seem to happen as much as it used to.
What's another big thing?
There you go, yeah.
What do you think about that?
Just it seems to be, everything's automative. Siri's probably listening right now,
Listening? Who does that?
I mean, occasionally, yeah, she doesn't understand what I said. I wasn't speaking with you. I don't know, yeah. I was hoping for bells. We were talking about happiness. Now I'm just stressed.
I'm looking for the choir. So I just shoveled up one of those gift flowers.
Yes,
I
yes.
do that. Some energy. Let's have a look. Oh, we could add it later.
Should we pause for a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. I got a call here from Arbetsförmedlingen.